Milim prayed for Rimuru's victory, hoping that the world would continue to be one, in which everyone could laugh. Chloe realized that there was nothing she could do anymore. Since time has stopped, the secret power time leap cannot be activated, since he cannot recall any memories of the future. What will happen from here on out is unknown. That's normal, but none of it would work in a normal battle. Chloe had realized this during the previous battle. Now it's up to Rimuru's strength. Even so, Chloe pondered. I believed that a person's true nature was revealed in the state of their soul. But what about Rimuru? Even though it's clear that its soul has disappeared, it continues to function as normal. It was very abnormal. That strong will shines brightly. Chloe was fascinated, attracted by that light. In this situation that should have been nothing but despair, my anxiety strangely seemed to disappear. Chloe had repeatedly experienced countless tragedies. Now was the culmination of having overcome them all. I can't see what lies ahead, but I've come this far. Once you stop, you can't go back to the past. If Rimuru loses, it will all be over. But I have a feeling that Rimuru-san will be able to do something about it. That was a certainty. Chloe had seen the future, where Rimuru disappeared and perished over and over again, but she had never once seen the scene of Rimuru clearly dying. Even in a future where he thought he was dead, he had the experience of being saved. In other words, the idea that Rimuru was dead was nothing more than Chloe's imagination. A being that exists without a soul, but with only a will. If this were permitted, all observational results would be overturned. If that's the case, then it will be the same in countless futures. The current situation may be the end of the world. However, time began to move again, and a path to the future remained. The intense light emitted by Rimuru was proof that he had not yet given up on the future and had a strong will. This was enough reason for Chloe to believe in Rimuru. Rimuru will definitely win. And beyond, that was a bright future. Chloe believed this and looked forward to Rimuru's victory. Ramiris was also at the mercy of this dizzying situation. In the first place, Ramiris had intended to pray for everyone's victory while resting peacefully in the labyrinth. He thought that all he could do was manage and operate the labyrinth. To begin with, Ramiris didn't know that she could function even in a suspended world. There were times when I thought that it was strange that no one was moving, but since it was something that happened occasionally, I just accepted it as it was. However, this time, an awakened Zijin has arrived. Or rather, when a loud thought transmission was emitted, he complained, "Hey, Zijin-chan, you're so noisy." This confirmed that he was able to move, and so he was accompanied by Zijin to this place. She was worried about the labyrinth, but Zijin advised her, "Don't worry, there's nothing we can do in the stop time. Rather, there must be something you can do to be useful." Convinced that this was true, Ramiris followed Zijin's advice. Ramiris shuddered, thinking that Zijin was in some pretty dangerous situation, using spatial teleportation while time had stopped. However, the real horror would come soon after. It seemed they had followed Rimuru's presence, but were surprised when they arrived at their destination. In many ways. First, when he saw Veldonava about to throw his sword at Rimuru, he immediately shouted, "Just wait a bit." It was a great move, but the reaction was not that good. "Why are you here?" Or rather, you were able to move even in a suspended world. There was not a single, "Ramiris is amazing." Although this was a shock to me, I accepted it as, "You can be amazed when you see what I do in the future." Next, when he turned his attention to Rimuru, the next shock came. "Rimuru, why are you still alive?" This is it. Even though he had no soul, he remained calm. Moreover, he was trying to revive Benimaru, who was near death and there was nothing that could be done. By making full use of healing techniques from another dimension. Zijin was strange, but his owner was even more out of it. But hey, it's Rimuru after all. The person who was able to convince him of this was Ramiris, who had a long relationship with Rimuru. Ramiris then tried to grasp the situation. When you do this, you will begin to see many things. The most important thing was that Veldonava was there. Really should I wait a bit? Ramiris was confused. Rimuru was also surprised, but he had never heard of Veldonava being revived. What's going on? Ramiris thought, wanting someone to explain the situation to her. However, now was not the time to be leisurely. As expected, even Ramiris could at least read the atmosphere. For this reason, Ramiris observed Veldonava. Ramiris has been reborn several times, but her growth rate varies. Sometimes she becomes an adult after a few decades, and sometimes she remains a child, even after hundreds of years. This time he was in a child state for a long time, but his memories were still inherited. It could be an important memory or an ordinary everyday thing, and regardless of importance, it was not something that Ramiris could do with it. Even if we have memories, some of them are merely knowledge. That's how I remembered Veldonava, as if it was something that had happened to someone else. It's a vague sense of personality and presence. He's warm, funny, full of curiosity, sometimes scary, and yet lonely. Was it something like this? The current Veldonava was far removed from the appearance that Ramiris remembered. For Ramiris, who doesn't know the color or shape of the soul, these differences aren't a factor to judge. She has no choice but to judge by other aspects and see through the authenticity. It was Ramiris who noticed it. All of the elements were Veldonava himself, but something was missing. It looks just as I remember. However, there were big differences in other aspects of their personalities. Hey, even if his wife Lucia was killed and he has a grudge against humans, isn't he changing too much? Rather than being rough, he has given up on everything and accepted it. Veldonava looked sober, as if he had grown tired of the game he was so passionate about. There was no doubt that it was her, but Ramiris was saddened by her completely changed appearance. You were a lot more passionate and never gave up. Just like Rimuru right now. Wait, what, Ramiris looked back and forth between Rimuru and Veldonava. And I thought they looked similar. Although he was different in many ways, and a completely different person. Rimuru now had a nostalgic aura about him. He sensed something from Rimuru that Veldonava had lost. Could it be that Rimuru is? That is merely speculation. However, Ramiris was seized by this suspicion. When you look at it that way, it's difficult to see anything else, which is a problem. Rimuru appears to have ordered Zijin to protect the unconscious Benimaru. It was a pretty reckless thing to do, but Benimaru was still in critical condition. It seemed like things would be fine if he regained consciousness, but time was stopped for now. He was unconscious from a serious injury, so it seemed that the power to heal his vital part, his magic core, which was his heart, was not working. However, it seemed like Ramiris could do it somehow. Even Ruminas cannot use holy magic when time is stopped. However, Ramiris can use magic regardless of the situation. However, it was only a small miracle, and it was impossible to exert great power. That is exactly what you want to do if you want to help Benimaru. No, perhaps if I could borrow some strength from Rimuru. Benimaru's energy was stable, and it wouldn't be surprising if he awakened at any time. In fact, compared to when he first went out on a mission a while ago, his power seemed to have increased significantly. To put it bluntly, this is a level that can be called evolution. Now, if the magic core could be activated, there was a good chance that it would awaken. It's my turn now, Ramiris thought. So, knowing that it might not work, he proposed it to Rimuru. In the end, she accepted. Thanks to that, Ramiris was able to show off her grown-up appearance for the first time in 50 years. This also proves Rimuru's abnormality, but Ramiris is not troubled. Well, if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, he's Rimuru. It's Rimuru, after all. That's how Ramiris was able to accept it, showing how careless she was. First of all, as promised, the first priority was to rescue Benimaru. The magic that is used is primitive magic. It was a supreme power that could create miracles simply by wishing for them, and was effective even in a world where laws did not apply. With primitive magic, healing is possible at will. Benimaru's body was enveloped in Ramiris' healing power and rebooted. That's great. Benimaru's heart has started beating again. Ramiris felt relieved. Benimaru's magic core began to function, adjusting the energy balance. Throughout his body, his condition was stable, so all that was left to do was wait for him to wake up. With this, Ramiris had essentially fulfilled her duty as promised to Rimuru. Still, though, Ramiris, now with some peace of mind, was pondering as she turned her attention to the battle between Rimuru and Veldonava. Is there really any meaning to this battle? Ramiris wondered about this. If his guess was correct, then there would be no need for the two of them to fight. There is no answer. Unfortunately, the correct answer will only be known once the matter is resolved. That's right, if it's Rimuru, I'm sure. Ramiris believed that he would give her the correct answer. As soon as Ramiris finished treating Benimaru, she decided to quietly pray for Rimuru's victory. Every time the swords crossed, a shock ran through my arm. It wasn't unbearable, but there was a limit to how much he could endure. If he hadn't had any means of recovery, both of his arms would have been destroyed in an instant. However, I am a slime. Since I can freely replace cells throughout my body, I can continue fighting while healing tired cells. This method doesn't require any magical power, so it's a very reliable strategy for me without Seal-san. Even so, facing him, I was reminded once again that Veldonava was strong. It was amazing that we were able to exchange swords for so long without any openings. This was also thanks to my diligent training, and I began to feel a little more confident. I still felt like something was missing, and then I suddenly realized something. That was the difference in height. Currently, I was about the height of an average high school girl, but Veldonava was tall. He was at least over 180 cm tall, so compared to me, who was just under 160 cm tall, there was a big difference in the length of my limbs. Well, unlike judo or other martial arts, height differences don't have to be that important in swordsmanship. Still, I thought the conditions should be the same. Now that my lifeline, Seal-san, is gone, I have to face a powerful enemy alone. I should have at least made the conditions as easy for me as possible. Since I had the chance, I wanted a body that was more like me. I decided to take on the final battle in a form that was more familiar to me than Rimuru's slime form. Although it had been rejected every time I became Seal, I can transform into male form. A long time ago, when Seal was still the great sage, he transformed into Satoru, a replica of his pre-reincarnation self. He felt that this form was more suitable for his current situation. Then I tried to see if I could transform. The result was surprisingly easy, and I was transformed into a tall, nice guy with short hair. Even if he can't use the authority, the ability to transform is unique to slimes. As the saying goes, it's easier to give birth than to worry, and it seems he was right. When he tried it, Veldonava looked at me suspiciously. So I'll tell you. Don't worry about it. It's just that it's easier to fight in this form. With my preparations complete, I attacked Veldonava with my sword. I was able to take it without any difficulty, just like before, but it felt easier to fight than before. Even if it was just my imagination, it was the right answer for me. Can I really defeat this guy, this god? Even though I'm up against an entity that controls all authority, my powers have been effective so far. Perhaps because of this, strangely, I didn't feel any fear. On the contrary, his thinking is clear. Anger at Benimaru for being hurt, indignation at the injustice of trying to destroy the world, all these emotions mixed together, making him calmer. Once you accept that this person is your enemy, your perspective will change. All they had to do was defeat Veldonava, the root of all problems, and all their problems would be solved. If you think about it that way, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The key is to win. Since Sealsan has vouched for my strength, the right thing to do is to believe her words and move forward. Just as it has always been, it will always be. Worrying about it was put off until later. After I defeat you, I'll ask you one last time. Are you willing to quietly change your mind? A battle is harder to end than to start. That's why I've always tried to be careful when dealing with things, but that consideration is no longer necessary. That's why I declared that I would defeat you. Veldonava chuckled at this. That's quite the boast from an automaton. Could that arrogance stem from your original personality? No, I am who I am, regardless of my original personality. To begin with, in my case, I couldn't use things like separate body, soul-body tie. If I had been there, I could have restored my personality, but I couldn't use it as skillfully as Velgrind. In terms of replicating a personality, it was simply impossible. Since it's only natural that I should be able to use this authority, I think there must be a problem with my consciousness. But on the other hand, the fact that I can't even replicate my ego is proof that the current me is the real thing. It's a stretch, but it's okay because I'm okay with it. Oh dear. That's what I want to say. I lightly blocked the sword strike that Veldonava casually unleashed. Emme. The interference waves of soul destruction flowed in through the crossing. Swords, however, it had no effect on me. It's an automaton without a soul, right? I don't think an attack like that will work. Despite saying so many things, this guy started to doubt whether I was an automaton without a soul. Of course not, you idiot. It's a pseudo thing, but it does exist. However, since it was a toy I created, it seems Veldonava was unable to find it. Or rather, they seem to be confused, thinking that there is no way such a thing could be used as a substitute. When I saw that, I thought I was lucky. After all, I don't have a soul right now. What this means is that most of the powers cannot be used. Well, it doesn't mean much to me. Either way, Seal wasn't there, so even if I could use it, I wouldn't be able to use it properly. So I didn't worry about it anymore. What's important is what I can do now. First of all, as I tried it out earlier, I can use my slime abilities and skills with ease. He was able to use unique abilities such as omnipotent perception, dragon spirit, aura, and omnipotent transformation naturally. My protection is still intact, so it seems the multidimensional barrier is fully protected without me having to do anything. Since he can move even when time has stopped, it seems he can control time and space without even being aware of it. He can use it without any skills, such as predation that he normally uses. From this he could derive soul-devouring and even imaginary space, which was derived from the often used stomach. He could manipulate it at will. To treat Benimaru, he diverted the energy stored in this imaginary space, using void collapse. Although he was just copying, he somehow managed to succeed. If you try, you will be able to make it work. I felt a connection with Veldora, and I felt like Velzard and Velgrind would respond if I called out to them. In other words, it seems like he could use skills like True Dragon Release, Scorching Heat, storm, white ice, or true dragon core transformation. Scorching heat, storm, white ice, if he wanted to. To begin with, true dragon liberation is always active. So I was able to handle all of the ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Void God. Azathoth, surprisingly well. In contrast to that, there is the ultimate ability, ultimate skill, King of Fertility. Shubnigurate. We're almost completely wiped out. For me, the powers that Seal used, such as ability creation, ability duplication, ability gifting, and ability preservation, were so far beyond my understanding that they were something that didn't concern me. If it's necessary for me, I'll learn it, but if not, I'm not interested. This is a case that clearly shows that negative side of me, but oh well. Since I can use powers that could be used in direct combat, it seems like I don't need to worry too much about it. So I'm all set. There was no need to wait, so I decided to set it up right away. Without any need for feints or anything, I unleashed Hope Elpies with all my might. It's a straightforward attack, but when the opponent is stopped, there's no room for trickery. There are some, but the success rate is low, and you can't expect much effect. I thought the right thing to do was to trust in the skill and level I had honed and take on the challenge head-on. Veldonava blocked my sword with his own. His skill and level are also quite impressive, or rather, it was said to be a miracle that he was even able to compete with him. Still, I have no choice but to do my best, so I concentrate on the fight. His will became sharper, as the number of information particles he sensed increased, his field of vision widened. It may seem strange to express it this way since no time had passed, but the offense and defense between Veldonava and I continued on as an even match for a while. Why are you on par with me? Because I'm strong. Yes, I am strong. That's what Seal said. If he doesn't meet those expectations, it will affect his reputation as a master. In truth, I was scared and wanted to run away, but I came up with a number of reasons to do so and mustered up the strength to do so. By doing so, my fear faded, and I was able to see what I needed to do. Now I can concentrate and face Veldonava. This was a good trend, and I didn't feel like I was going to lose. Even if it's just a bluff, just being able to think that way makes me feel lighter. Perhaps sensing my composure, Veldonava's expression took on a displeased look. It's truly amazing. A tiny being that never existed in the past can become strong enough to rival me. You're praising me, right? Yes, for a being like you to be born so naturally into the world I created, there are still many amazing things happening. Maybe your interest in this world has returned a little. If so, my wish to help Benimaru and withdraw from this world was rejected before I even got to say it. No further words are necessary. My decision will not be reversed. Ah, is that so? Unfortunately, Veldonava was determined. I was tempted to show some sympathy for a moment, but I realized that I was meddling. I guess I'll just try not to think about unnecessary things and just focus on winning. I warned myself and focused on Veldonava, searching more carefully for a way to win. Before the fight began, I had the mindset of doing my best, and if it didn't work, I'd give up. Of course, assuming I would do my best, I thought it would be a stroke of luck if I could get some revenge. However, once the battle began, I was surprised to see how well I was doing. Since Seal wasn't there, I thought we would lose immediately. However, now, in terms of sword fighting, he was not only able to hold his own, but was also able to fight on equal terms. I thought it would be okay for me to declare that I was strong, and in fact I would like to say that I should praise myself more. Well, it was worth all the training I've received from Hakuru up until now. Training isn't the most accurate term. It was actually more like handling or torturing, and at worst it felt worse than a punishment game. The only reason I was able to go along with it was because I had excellent physical abilities. It was truly fortunate that I was reincarnated as a slime. I'm sure I would have died before I was reincarnated. And so, we are still able to compete. I was grateful to my past self for realizing that hard work pays off. Now that I was in Satoru's form, the height difference between me and Veldonava wasn't that great. Their sword skills are evenly matched, so it looks like there's a chance of winning. It's what I thought, but thinking like that leads to carelessness. I need to be on my guard and investigate Veldonava's movements. Perhaps sensing my optimistic mood, Veldonava narrowed his eyes in even greater discomfort. On the contrary, I feel relieved that he has finally been able to express his emotions. This is a bluff. By continuing to bluff and confusing Veldonava's judgment, it seemed that this would be the foothold to victory. That's what I thought, but it seems that was too naive. My goodness, the singularity is more troublesome than I thought. Veldonava said this, looking at me with emotionless eyes. Then he pushed me away with his sword. I didn't resist the current and just jumped back. I prepared myself, but there was no follow-up attack. It seems you don't know what despair is. In that case, I'll teach you. Then I'll listen to your final argument and see if you can continue spouting sweet jokes like you've been saying up until now. Veldonava wasn't going to let himself get caught up in my pace, and instead revealed his own hand in an attempt to seize the initiative. I had a really bad feeling. Veldonava raised his hand towards the sky, and countless balls of light appeared. A dazzling arrow of fire that seemed to fill the entire sky. No matter how you look at it, it was magic. You've got to be kidding me. How can you use magic when time has stopped? I was surprised at first, but when I thought about it, it made sense. After all, Ramiris had also used magic on Benimaru. I wasn't able to observe it closely, but it was undoubtedly healing magic. If Ramiris could do it, it was only natural that Veldonava could too. Just as I was thinking about this, Guy told me. It's primitive magic. It's pure power that has no relation to the concept of time. There's no concept of time either. Is this some kind of law manipulation that can be used anywhere? It doesn't seem to consume any energy, so it's an extremely cowardly power. By the way, even the current me would find it impossible to do something on that scale. Even with Ramiris's help, now in her adult form, it's impossible for her to negate a magic that fills the heavens. I thought that was probably the case, so I wasn't too upset. Burning forth primordial flame. Veldonava's magic was being constructed. Although the current situation would have been enough, the number continued to increase. Although no time passed, I was able to recognize the effect until it manifested, so it seems that even primitive magic cannot ignore the rule that the movement speed of information elements is constant. This is reassuring, but it does not lead to victory. I'm just feeling excited and excited. Your comrades and acquaintances who have gathered here will all be burned by my flames. Velzard may be protecting them, but she cannot block the power of this flame. Veldonava's plan was to make me despair. Stop it. If you do that, I will never forgive you. I calmed my mind and told him calmly. Although he intended to fight to the end, he still searched for a way to reconcile. He was Millam's father, a close friend of Guy and the others, and the creator of this world. It would be difficult to destroy such a being, so I hoped that he would acknowledge my victory and then have a change of heart. However, there is a problem. If they're going to lay hands on something important to me, I can't afford to be so leisurely. I have no choice but to use all the means at my disposal and go to the very end so that they can't even try anything unnecessary. If words didn't work, the only option left was violence. Even after hearing my advice, Veldonava's expression didn't change. And then, mercilessly, he shook his hand down. Conclusively, the negotiations broke down. Arrows of flame shining in the sky are each fired at their target. Despair surged in my heart, and immediately afterwards, in the midst of the stop time, my thoughts accelerated even further. The flaming arrows are aimed at those gathered in this place. If they were all fired at once, everyone would disappear without being able to do anything. A despairing future awaits, in which all but those who can cope with the time stop will die. King Gazelle, Yaomu, Hinata, and the members of the Holy Knights and Crusaders, Leon and his subordinates, the heroes belonging to the Free Association, soldiers from the Empire, and even the Titans who had been there. Enemies, until just a short while ago. There are many other close friends as well. My companions, led by Gabuta and friends like Karian and Frey, and even Yuuki. And the others, who are a bit shady but hard to hate. All the important people I've met since being reborn into this world will meet there. And equally. Is this something I can never forgive? I thought. It's no good to just try your best and then give up if it doesn't work. If that happens, everyone will die. All possibilities will be lost, and everything that has been cultivated up until now will come to nothing. Without it being passed down to future generations, all meaning in human life is lost, and all great achievements become worthless. That is unacceptable and must not be done. When I was reincarnated into this world, I wanted to be free from all ties and live freely. I was surprised to find out that it was a slime, but as long as it's alive, there are many things to enjoy. I thought it would be fine to live as I pleased and die irresponsibly. However, when he met Rimuru and the others, he found himself making friends. Everyone relied on me, and I felt a sense of responsibility. If someone relies on me, I'll do my best. I could no longer be irresponsible. The connections and bonds I had with everyone kept me alive. Because I found meaning in life. I have a dream, and every day is fun. If I hadn't been connected to anyone, I would have left this world long ago. That is why I am grateful to this world. It must be protected. What a relief. It was truly a relief. To entrust the fate of this world to a careless person like me. But if they rely on me, I have to do my best. That's how I live my life, and it's the same now. I've made up my mind. No, I was prepared from the beginning. I turned my attention to the flaming arrows filling the sky. Recognition is possible. So I came up with a solution. What worries me is whether I, who has no soul and only an ego, can do it. For Master, nothing is impossible. I felt like I heard Seal's voice say that. It was. There was no time to worry anymore. I had no choice but to do it. Besides, to begin with, Seal-san is also a being without a soul. And yet, he was able to freely control his powers. If that's the case, there's no way I can't do it. Since I was able to use slime-specific skills, I should be able to do something this time too. No, that's not it. Something has to be done. To that end, fiery arrows rained down from the sky. The next moment, all of the flaming arrows disappeared. Yes, it was a success. Veldonava had a surprised look on his face. I was worried myself, but now that I've had such success, I've decided to just accept it as a given. Veldonava had created flaming arrows using primitive magic, but I was able to perceive them all, and my soul devourer is an authority that allows me to instantly devour everything that I can perceive. In other words, as long as it was within the range that the information particles could recognize, it was theoretically possible to deal with it, whether it was primitive magic or an unknown power. In reality, there was no way to know what kind of attacks he would be able to withstand without trying them out. The truth was that all he could do was hope that They would work. It was my first time handling it without seal, so I was extremely anxious and nervous, but it was a success, so it's no problem. Since I can perceive the entire battlefield, attacks like this one can be neutralized, no matter how many times they are repeated. To put it a little exaggeratedly, primitive magic doesn't work on me. So this was a big moment. It's useless. Emission-type techniques don't work on me. With that said, I took a step towards Veldonava. Still, though, ignoring the warnings to stop, Veldonava activated primitive magic. For me, this act was an act of violence that crossed the final line. I'll never forgive him again, I thought, furious. Not towards Veldonava, but towards myself. Benimaru almost died because he hesitated. And he remains in a coma to this day. But even so, I was still confused. As a result, he ended up putting his friends in danger. Although they were able to overcome the situation safely in the end, one wrong move could have resulted in casualties among their teammates. This was undoubtedly a mistake on my part, due to poor judgment. No matter what the other party's circumstances were, it was none of our business. Even if he was feeling sympathy, he should have done so when he had the time. If the other party is not going to take us into consideration, there is no need for us to unilaterally accept their demands. Furthermore, if they are going to destroy us for their own selfish reasons, then my answer is to resist with all my might. What does it matter if the other person is a god? If someone tries to take away our dreams and hopes, then they are our enemy. Defeat the enemy. That was all. I will defeat you. I'm going to kill you, I declared again. What? Veldonava started to say that, but there was no way he would let him finish the sentence. I approached Veldonava using instantaneous movement teleport and slashed upward with all my might with the sword I was holding in my left hand. Veldonava hastily responded. Although he blocked my sword, his balance was thrown of. That moment was exactly what I was aiming for. He clenched his right fist and slammed it into Veldonava's defenseless face. Veldonava was blown away and came to a halt after crashing into the wall of Tensura. As I watched, I suddenly felt like my mind had become clear. It feels like all my worries have been cleared up. I had thought I had to punch him at least once, and I achieved that goal. Next, let's aim for complete victory. You're not the only one who feels sorry for me. I walked up to Veldonava and told him. These words could come back to haunt us. Those who have never experienced pain should not say these words to those who are hurting. Even I wouldn't be able to stay calm if something happened to one of my friends. However, if Veldonava is trying to drag the world into his tragedy, I have no choice but to say something. I can't say for sure that I won't become like you, but what good will it do to talk about such a future? Now is the time. If you lose the present, you lose the future. I have no intention of saying nice things like I understand your sadness. It'll just sound like a lie anyway. Comfort from someone who cannot share the same pain will never truly reach your heart. This is because people have no choice but to recover from grief on their own. All others can do is to be there for them, and if they are heading down the wrong path after a tragedy, to try to correct them. That's why I'm telling you. In return, I will reject with all my might the foolishness of what you are trying to do. I don't care if you're a god or whatever. I will oppose you with all my heart and soul. The winner will decide which claim is correct. Either way, if we don't win, it's over, so there's no point in worrying about what happens later. I feel like my eyes have been opened up. All I had to do was stick to my own sense of justice. Make me laugh, Veldonava said this as he slowly stood up. It doesn't seem like a punch would do much damage. I put all my strength into gripping my beloved sword, which I named Hope. LPs. Then, I feel as if I can sense a powerful heartbeat, and my energy surges. Veldonava also readied his sword. Unlike before, it seemed like he seriously recognized me as an enemy. I should be honored, but it seems the difficulty of the mission has increased, giving me a headache. This is no time to complain, so I stop worrying and slash. Away with my sword. Veldonava didn't dodge. He didn't even block it with his sword, but let it go straight through me. As a result, it hit me right on the shoulder. It felt like I was hitting a block of iron with a wooden sword. My hand felt numb, but I think this was because my strength was being deflected back. Moreover, after finishing his attack, Veldonava's sword was swung down on me, leaving me defenseless. I hurriedly turned back into a slime. Perhaps because this was an emergency, it went very smoothly. Thanks to that, they managed to avoid it just in time. I rolled away from Veldonava and transformed into my subtle state once again. He then readied his sword and pondered the current attack and defense. It felt hard, but that was due to the multiple barriers. The problem was that it felt like my skills were sealed. But wait a minute. In the first place, the current sword technique does not have any magical effects added to it, so it is merely in a simple state like fighting spirit sword or aura sword. It would be difficult to block a combined technique using a barrier or similar, but a simple technique could be completely blocked. The same was true for Yuuki's ability sealant skill, but it was only natural. That Veldonava could use it. This meant that in the suspended world, where magic could not be used, he could not use techniques such as Storm Black Magic Slash or Storm Break, which combined magic and sword techniques, so he had no choice but to clad and wrap his fighting spirit and aura, but that level of technique and arts was no use against Veldonava's barrier. In other words, there's nothing we can do. No, it's too early to give up. There's also the primitive magic that Ramiris used, so if we can analyze that. But that's impossible. If Seal were here, she would have been happy to analyze it without me having to ask, and it would have already been put to use. Unfortunately, she's not here now, so I can't rely on her. In that case, I have no choice but to do my best on my own, and the only thing I can do is... That's right. Suddenly, an idea occurred to me. Come to think of it, there was collapse of nothingness. When he was treating Benimaru, he had even managed to perform the risky feat of converting the negative energy of nothingness into positive energy. This time, he was planning to wrap that nothingness around his sword and hit it with it. It seems like the skill would be nullified on its own, but this void isn't an authority. It just utilizes the energy of the natural world, which is a bit different since it doesn't exist in nature. It seemed like there was a good chance it would work. Not only that, there's also the easy-to-use Soul Devourer. I linked this with the sword too, and it worked. Maybe it's because I named it that I feel as though the sword and I have become one, so I thought it might be an interesting way to use it by concentrating it on the blade and activating Soul Devouring. This was exactly what I was aiming for. It looks like I'll be able to achieve the desired effect. The enemy's energy is eliminated by wrapping the sword in nothingness. The energy that was lost is then absorbed by me using Soul Devourer. Even if it wasn't possible with one hit, if I continued to thrust my sword at him, I felt like I could break through any defense. Isn't Veldonava no exception? Well, rather than worry about it, I decided to try it first. Having made that decision, I attacked Veldonava with my sword. Then, something surprising happened. The barrier was cut through with ease. Even Veldonava seemed surprised by this. What did you just do? I was surprised too, but I answered calmly so as not to let him know. I cut him. That was a stupid question. There's no way I would give a serious answer to the enemy. I had no intention of teaching him, but when he brushed it off so easily, being the Contrarian that I am, I wanted to teach him. It's a new technique. I'll name it Hollow Eat Breathe Collapse How. Sword can I think. I just tried it on a whim, but it was a huge success. Even so, it has incredible power. This is the basic form, and it seems that it can be further developed. It looks like it can be incorporated into my special technique, so I might be able to use it in the battle against Veldonava. What's more important is that I was able to break through Veldonava's multiple barriers and ability-killing Sealant skill. This proved that my attacks would also work, so I could see my chances of winning. With the prospect of defeating Veldonava now in sight, I grinned broadly. Veldonava was confused. It was unexpected that Rimuru, a character who never existed in the past, would become the biggest obstacle. They had declared it to be a maximum singularity, but it seems to have been something even more terrifying. It had been a long time since he had been hit, and it was also the first time he had ever been injured in a frontal fight. Even during his fight with Guy, he didn't remember having any particular difficulties. Moreover, it was completely impossible for him to be cornered to this extent. But that's different now. The more Veldonava felt a sense of crisis towards Rimuru, the more things were not going as he had hoped. Even as he fights, Rimuru grows stronger and stronger. It seemed that he was trying to figure out how to fight through actual combat, and the more experience he gained, the more his skills improved. What truly surprised me was the moment my primitive magic was nullified. In order to completely break their spirits and crush their will to fight, he tried to eliminate everyone who had gathered in this place, including Rimuru's companions. The only people who have value to Veldonava are those who are connected to him. In the past, he would have thought that all life was precious, but now it has become an emotion he cannot understand. Therefore, he had no hesitation or reluctance to destroy even the heroes who were trying to protect this world. He intended to burn them all to ashes without any restraint or mercy. And yet, Rimuru managed to block it. This fact meant that Rimuru possessed abilities on a par with Veldonava. It's not that he was underestimating them from the start, but he was absolutely confident that he wouldn't lose. But now, even Veldonava was in a situation where he couldn't be sure.